Hello, my name is Victor and I hope you're having a wonderful evening. And thank you for watching this video essay of mine, where I'll be arguing that capitalism is antithetical to democracy because both capitalism and democracy follow different logics that oppose each other. To begin, I would like to ask a question. Why do people distrust their elected officials? See, we live in an era of democracy rapidly spreading, which also coincides with a rapid discomfort and distrust toward our governments. Why is it that throughout the last three presidencies, people continue to lose trust in our government? Historically, public trust in the government has been declining, with a few instances where public trust marginally increases. Public trust with the government is sitting at 20%. Of course, many would say that this is an indictment of Donald Trump's presidency, which it is. But remember that during the Obama presidency, public trust wasn't any different, really, never really surpassing 30%. Well, why don't we trust our government? And why am I mentioning capitalism? Before I can begin to divulge my answers, I must first define my terms: democracy, capitalism, and contradiction. Democracy is a very difficult word to define because definitions of democracy have never been fixed or neatly and concretely defined. Instead, the definition of democracy has changed multiple times, often to allow for. Instead, the definition of democracy has changed multiple times throughout history, and most usually it changed to allow for more democracy to take place. The Google definition of democracy is a form of government in which the people have the authority to choose their governing legislators. I find this definition to be significantly inadequate in capturing the many ways people participate in politics. Democracy isn't just voting once every 4 to 2 years, but instead encompasses many forms of participation, such as activism, protesting, organizing community support, and mutual aid funds. And therefore, I'll be using my personal definition of democracy, which is the co-creation and recreation of shared communities through the people's collective participation in politics. Now, let's define capitalism: an economic and political system in which a country's trade and industry are controlled by private owners for a profit, rather than by the state. Short and dirty, just like capitalism. Contradictions are most usually defined by the contradiction itself. So let me ask you, are your interests and interests of the politicians aligned? Or are they at odds? Most people genuinely understand what is in their best interest. Most Americans understand that they are overworked and are struggling financially, or that college tuition raises every year, but the value of your degree has diminishing returns. This is why public support for progressive policies continues to grow. The American people largely support policies such as Medicare for All, 5 for 15, tuition-free college, cancellation of some increment of student loan debt, whether it's all of it, 50,000, or 10,000 of that student loan debt, the legalization of marijuana, paid maternity leave, and taxing the wealthy, and with a staggering number of almost 93% support for federal jobs guarantee. American people aren't confused or misguided, nor is this a part of some massive liberal brainwashing machine. In reality, the American people support these policies because these policies are within our interest. So why haven't all these policies been passed? It's because the interest of the working people and the interest of It's because the interest of working people and the interest of politicians are at odds. So why haven't all these policies been passed? And it's quite literally because of contradictions. See, the contradiction of this video is between the working people who want progressive policies and between the politicians who have their own interest. And unraveling their interest is going to show us why these progressive policies aren't being passed, or at least being blocked, and prevention from ever getting passed or seeing Congress. Let's use Medicare for All as our example. Medical debt is the leading cause of bankruptcies in America. The reality is that in 2019, over 137 million Americans experience some sort of medical financial hardship, i.e., medical debt. Of course, the statistic shouldn't be seen in a vacuum, and we should remember that under COVID-19 pandemic, unemployment rised by the millions. People were filing for unemployment insurance. Week by week, the number was increasing by the millions because people were being unemployed, causing many millions of Americans to lose access to their employer-provided health care during a global pandemic, the likes of which have seen nearly 500,000 people dead in the United States alone. This is why Medicare for All is very popular amongst Democrats. It is gaining popularity amongst Republicans. It's because our healthcare system has become so outstandingly expensive that only a select few people can afford to even have that only a select few people can afford to live. Around 63% of the country supports some sort of single-payer healthcare system. Despite a couple of exceptions, politicians are not arbiters of truth who enact the people's interest. They typically say shit like, we don't have enough votes for this or that, or the other side is preventing us or being a blockade to progress. See, everyone knows that the politicians are ineffective ghouls, but are they ineffective? In reality, politicians always pass their interest, or the interest of those who are in their pop. In reality, politicians are quite effective at passing policies that are in their interest. The U.S. National Library of Medicine and the National Institute of Health conducted a study on lobbying expenditures and campaign contributions by the pharmaceutical industry. Since 1990, companies like Pfizer, Kaiser, and other pharmaceutical companies have used 4.7 billion to lobby against federal and state governments. Since the 1990s, companies like Pfizer, Kaiser, and other pharmaceutical Since the 1990s, the pharmaceutical industry, such as Pfizer, Kaiser, and other pharmaceutical since the 1990s, companies like Pfizer, Kaiser, and other pharmaceutical companies have used over $4.7 billion to lobby federal and state legislators to write beneficial legislation for them. 414 million. From that money, 414 million was spent on presidential and electoral candidates. This money was specifically targeted toward the campaigns of senior legislators who were also involved in healthcare committees and drafting healthcare policies. Now, can you see their interest? Yes. We elect people like Joe Biden. But remember, that Biden boy received a little fucking money from the healthcare industry and has now stepped away from the milquetoast public option he was originally proposing. The grim reality is that our interests are not aligned with the interest of big money, and despite us electing our government, they still cheat us out. But they still cheat on us with big money. It's like we keep giving the fuckboy another chance, and then he sleeps with his ex again, only for us to give him another chance next year, for him to do the same thing. Except we're jumping between two fuckboys, one who wears a red shirt, the other who wears a blue. They're both cheating on us, and we keep on jumping in between them. And therefore, I like to propose something different. It's called collective action. I shouldn't be talking, but collective action is a great way to 1. Make strong and unified policy demands. 2. Hold public officials accountable for their lives and service to their donor class. And 3. To simply help impoverished communities build strong political ideals. Finally, I just wanted to say that the problem here is obvious. Politicians serve the interest of big money and neglect us until election season comes around. Yep, the problem is capitalism. Capitalism, especially in late-stage capitalist societies such as the current United States, will always result in elites using their wealth to buy the interest of governments. It's an aspect of eliminating competition and exceeding the maximum level of profits. It's what has happened and will always happen. The money is in the hands of a small few. and they're not interested in you, only the labor you produce. Everything we want to achieve is possible, but we need to recognize our class conflicts. Then we need to organize, and then we can win.